Welcome back to another class on learning the tools in Affinity Designer. So today we're going to go through all of the tools on that left toolbar. So the very first one you should already be familiar with as soon as you open the program. It is your basic selection tool. And I'm just going to put a few ellipses or circles here and go over some very basic things about your selection or move tool. First thing, the keyboard shortcut is V, and because you use the move tool so much, it's one of the keyboard shortcuts that you should learn very quickly because it does save quite a bit of time. So with Affinity Designer, you can either click on the object in order to select it to move, or you can click on your artboard and move over. The thing with Affinity though, you need to actually click over the entire thing. So for instance, this one, I'm over the majority of the object, but if I were to let go of my mouse right now, it's not going to select the object. You literally have to go over the entire shape or simply just click on your object. The benefit of having it to where you have to select everything, if you're creating like a very detailed piece of work, you would have to go over the entirety of both of them in order to select both if you wanted to. Or if you just wanted to select the one and not the other, it's beneficial because then it's not automatically selecting something that you don't want to at that moment. The very next tool down is the artboard tool. So you can make the shape and size that you would like for your artboard. Click, drag. It automatically has the width and height, so you can make it what you would like. Click, and it changes your artboard to your new one that you have just created. And once again, you can still edit it to the shape and size that you need. At any point in your program, if you need to go a few steps back like you just saw me do, hit Command Z. The next tool down is your node tool. Keyboard shortcut is A, and it's another one that is extremely helpful to know. This one, I'm just going to put I have the heart selected, so I'm just going to do this heart really quickly. With your node tool or A selected, I need to convert this to curves so I can actually use this. So it shows you all of your nodes or points on your shape. And where your node tool is most helpful, you select the point or node that you would like to edit, and you can move just that one around. Not only that, but it brings up your handlebars so that you can change the shape to the way that you would like it to look. Moving down is your curve tool, or C on your keyboard. It's one shortcut I don't use very often. I usually just select it in my toolbar. But if you have a shape that has your standard like 90-degree angle or whatever degree angle, your curve tool, you can come in and add a curve to that one specific corner, or you can go through holding Shift and select any of the points that you would like, and then you can add in curves that will all match. Your next tool is the pen tool, or P on your keyboard. I do use the pen tool actually probably more frequently in Affinity Designer than I do in Illustrator. It's one thing that can be extremely intimidating at first. There are some games out there online that you can play to familiarize yourself with the tool, but your very basic understanding of your pen tool or you're just clicking to make points. You can hold shift so that it will remain in a straight line. And you need to close an object to make it a shape. You'll know that you're closing it because you'll come back to that last point and you'll see that circle right below the pen. So now you have created a shape. You can also make one point, make your second point. I'm going to jump back because I did not do that correctly. So make your second point and then pull away as you're still holding your mouse down to make a curve. And you can hold your shift to make it into 45-degree angles. So it is the very basic things you need to know when doing your pen tool. Obviously straight lines, closing your shape, and how to make curves. It takes quite a bit of practice to get comfortable with the pen tool, but once you get it, you're pretty good and you'll start using it more and more frequently because you can see the benefit of it. Your next tool is your pencil tool. So with your mouse, you can just move around and it automatically puts in points for you. At the top, you can change the width. There's also the controller option. So it has your brush defaults, automatic pressure. So if you're using something like a Wacom tablet, it's really great to go in and add your pressure. So as you are putting pressure on your tablet, it's going to be a thicker line than when you are putting less pressure. And velocity, downward strokes, it will put in a thicker. So pretty much the very basics of the pencil tool. Moving down is your vector brush tool. And I will use this one. The only thing that I wish Affinity Designer would come up with is an equivalent of the Blob brush tool in Illustrator, which they haven't done yet. You can kind of use this one in the same way if you want to do some painting, but the difference is with this one, it puts in all kinds of points instead of making it one cohesive shape for the color. But you can get away with doing the same thing if you really wanted to, and then you just need to outline the stroke or expand it. So to move on to the next couple of items, I'm going to delete this, get the rectangle tool out, and you can see that I was using something with a stroke, so it has added a stroke to everything as well as a gradient because I was playing around in the program earlier and that came up. So the very first thing I'm going to do is go over to the color panel, which is at the top right of the program. I'm going to take the stroke off of these, and then I'm also going to take the gradient off and make it a solid. We'll go for blue. Blue is my favorite color if you haven't been able to tell, because I use blue or aqua in everything. With this first one selected, your next item is the fill tool. When you select on the item, you will see that it has dropped in a gradient onto your shape. Now you can go into if you want to fill or stroke, but for this you go into your type and you can change the actual style of the gradient. You can also go in and change this manually instead of doing it all on the shape. And it has the kind of the same options as the type, but here once again you can play with the numbers to get it exactly how you would like. You can change the opacity if you don't want it showing too much, and you can change the color to suit your needs. You can also reverse the gradient. So the next item down is your transparency tool. So I'm going to layer these on top so you can really see what it's doing. As you can see, it looks at first as if it's adding a gradient like the very last square. But when you layer it on top like I did, you can see that it is in fact transparent because you can see below to that other square. And just like with the fill tool, you can go in and you can make some adjustments to this. So changing the direction of the actual transparency. And it also has tools so you can go in and manually make adjustments. The very next item is the Place Image tool. If you click it, it's going to open up whatever the last folder that you were in. Select the image that you would like to place, and then click on your artboard where you would like to place it. And you can always go in and change the size. This works really, really great when you are doing something like a brochure or a lookbook where you need to quickly place an image in the spot that you would like it. And you can always, it's a lot easier if you use that tool as opposed to doing the other option, which is opening up your image in a separate document in Affinity Designer, and then you have to copy and then paste it in. So using your Place Image tool is a much easier option. Moving down, the Vector Crop tool. So if I wanted to crop this square, I select it and I can move it around. And now it has been cropped. You can always make adjustments as needed. Before getting to the shapes, I'm just going to go through and delete. So your very first tool is your rectangle tool, or M on your keyboard. I'm going to take the gradient off of this. You'll notice anytime you use any of the shape tools in Affinity Designer, you have options to go in and really customize the shape to the way that you need it to look. And I absolutely love this about Affinity Designer. Everything is very easy to edit, unlike Illustrator, which has very few options for shapes. So for the most part, you have to go in and either make it exactly how you want it using the pen tool. At least with Affinity Designer, you have a lot of control over creating the shapes. And I love that so much. So obviously your very first thing is your fill color, so you can change that, your stroke. You can change your corners to rounded, straight if you want. It always reminds me of Battlestar Galactica because they cut off the edges on the paper. Your concave, which kind of looks like the old school movie tickets, and I've actually created an invitation once where it was actually needed to look like the old school movie tickets. So the shape would have been way easier than what I had to do to create it. And then you could always go in and add some smaller circles here and kind of take those away using the tools that we went over in the very first video. So you would just subtract it, and then you have a ticket. And then you have your cutouts. So Ellipse is next. And you can convert it to a donut, which we'll go over later. Or you can, I'm going to go a couple steps back, convert it to a pie, Once again, we'll go over that a little bit later. Your next thing would be your rounded rectangle tool. So you can go in, it's the same as the other, like the rectangle. You can change the corners, you can change the roundness of your rectangle. The next option, you have to click and it gives a ton of options for different shapes. So triangle, your top point, you can move it to your left or right. You can mirror. Next is a diamond. And I like this because you can go in and you can change the midpoint. And this works great when you are doing patterns. So you can do something fun and abstract with this. Or if you're designing a character that just needs to fly a kite or something, this is a very quick and easy way to make a kite. I mean, I've taken 2 seconds to make a diamond, go in and edit the midpoint, and you have the shape of the kite already. You can mirror it, so it's just changing, like it's just flipping it. Next is the trapezoid. And once again, just the absolute control that you can get with Affinity is just amazing. I love this, how you can go in and just change it without having to go to a different tool in order to do it. If you're in Illustrator, you can make this trapezoid, and in order to go and change these like left and right points, you'd have to go and use their version of the node tool and change the point manually, as opposed to just creating the shape and going to the top toolbar and moving a slider around. You can also mirror on this one just like you could with the diamond. Next is the Polygon Tool. And I know I keep going on about how much control you have over your shapes in Affinity, but when you get to tools like the Polygon Tool, you really get to see how different Affinity is than other programs, because it's all live, so you get to see it as you're doing it, which is fantastic. So I can go in, say I want like 7 sides. I can either type it in, or you can move the slider and just play around with the number of sides that you need. You can also change a curve to make more rounded edges. The star tool, same as the others, you can add curved edges, you can go in, you can add points. I like adjusting the inner radius as well as the outer and inner circle. So this is going in and it's just kind of like pulling those, like the inner points out further. And then your outer circle is rounding your points, and then your inner circle is rounding the inner points. Your double star, this one's used a lot for like comic books or like comic style images. So same as the star tool, you can go in and change the number of points and the roundness that you would like for all of those points. Your square star tool, it's another one that's really, really fun to go in and play with, adding more points. Your cutout is kind of like thinning it out, is the way that I like to think of it anyways. The arrow tool, and this one's another one that's fun because it automatically is throwing an arrow on both sides of these. But you can go in and you can just select if you want the right or the left, and you can change the end that you have selected. So they have different types of arrow heads, if you want to call it that. and also the ending. So whatever project you're working on, you need an arrow. There's a lot of choices already built into the program. You can change the thickness of it. And you can also change that arrow, so the length, and also how you're going to offset it. So like I said, it's easy to customize for whatever project you are working on. The donut tool, this one's really great if you're working on something like an infographic where you need to show like differences, because you can go in, first thing you can change the actual radius of that hole, but this is where it's really great for the infographics, because you can go in and you can change this angle, so you can show the example of percentages by color. So just copy paste and do different colors and then add in your percentage for whatever the project is on. The pie tool is exactly the same for me. Like, it's really great if you're trying to do an infographic and you need to show something on like a pie chart, because you can go in and change, just like with the last one, where your angles begin and end. You can always invert your angles, or if you decide that you just want a circle, you can close it. You can also go in and add a hole like the donut in this one. Your segment tool, once again, like the last two, works really great for an infographic or something like that. I mean, it can be used hundreds of ways. I mean, you could do all of this with like character design as well. But you can change your angle so it's in a different direction. You can change exactly where that line is hitting. On either side. You can mirror it, and then if you use the negate, it goes to the opposite. So whatever is not showing, it switches and it will show. Your Crescent tool. I actually worked on a design in Illustrator, and I had to do all of this by the pen tool. And I really wish at that time I knew that the Crescent tool existed in Affinity Designer, because it would have been so much easier. So you can choose your curve, where exactly it's starting and ending. And as you can see, like if you were doing, so here in the US, there's going to be a full eclipse. Actually, in my state, it's going to pass over. So I was working on like a lunar like stage to kind of correspond with it, and like this is great because it really does go like the full shape that the moon does. And you can also mirror. Same thing with the negate, you can go to the opposite of, so whatever's not showing will then show. The Cog Tool, you can change the number of teeth on the cog. You can change the radius, yet again, of that. You can change how large that hole is. You can change the tooth size. So this actually would work really well. Once again, I always think of patterns, but it would work really well for patterns, especially with like a bohemian style pattern. You could have a lot of fun with these shapes. The Cloud Tool. If you've watched many of my videos, you will know that I like using the Cloud Tool a lot for flowers. So you can change the number of bubbles, and then you can also change the radius on this. The next is the call out rounded rectangle tool. So you can go in and you can change how rounded those edges are. And then you can play around with the tail height and where it is actually positioned on the bottom. So once again, there's just a lot of ways you can customize these shapes. The call out ellipse tool, I've actually had to use the call out style things for several projects, so this is really handy that it's already built into the program. The tier tool, and you can change exactly how you want it to look. And I love how it has the tail position as well as the bend position, because this would be a great way of doing like a paisley pattern, because that's pretty much the basic shape of paisley. So then you can just go in and add in all the details to finish off the design. And then last is the heart tool. There's not as much customizing, but I mean, it's a basic heart. You can go in and change the width and height, and that is mostly what you need for it. So your next thing is your text tool. If you click and hold, it will show you exactly how large that font is going to be. So you can start off at the size that you need for your project. Your next tool is the color picker, and you just go in, select the color that you would like, and then you will see that it is showing up in your color picker in the color panel at the top right. Your next tool is your hand tool. And as you can see, your hand, if you click, it drags your artboard around so you can get it in the exact spot you would like it. The keyboard shortcut for this, and I do use it quite often, is just to hold down the space bar. So as soon as you click on your space bar, you will see the hand and you can move it around. The last is your magnifying glass or your zoom tool. Just click and pull in, and it will zoom in to what you need to look closer at. So that is all of your tools on your left toolbar. They are the very basic building blocks of Affinity Designer, and I recommend really going in and playing around with them to get comfortable with them and used to them, because you will use them all of the time. I hope you enjoyed the class, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share.